In this video, I want to talk about how to write the connections essay. So I want you to use these short articles or news pieces, short pieces. Uh, I've given you two to read, and what you'll try to do is make a connection that is a depth connection between the two pieces. Now, when I say piece, I'm talking about an essay, an article, a story, a news event. I'll give you two of these, and then you have to understand each one and then find a way that you can connect them. But the trick, the heartbeat of this essay, right? The whole reason I want you to practice this and to do this is so that you can practice finding a connection that you think is legitimately there, but it's just not easy to see. It's a depth connection. Now, both of these pieces will have a surface connection. So I'm making distinctions between types of connections here. There's a surface level connection or an easy to see connection, and then there's a depth connection. And you can use both of these in your essay, but the part that's really going to make your essay be a piece that creates interest, maintains it, and rewards it, right, is the depth connection, because that's the reward that you're giving the reader or your audience. And again, it's a subtle reward. It's a small intellectual reward. It's the reward of a new insight. It helps your audience feel that they've grown, that you've given them a new vantage point or a new idea. And yeah, sure, it's a small thing, but you fill your life up with small rewards, and it's a pretty grand and great experience in the big picture. So um, this is what I'm talking about. You want to make sure that whatever you write, if someone goes through it, they felt like it was worth their time. It was a decent experience. They're glad they read it. You know what I'm saying? So the surface level connection should be easy to see. All right. So if you're reading a piece on, say, you know, Exxon Mobil, the oil company, and maybe it's just whatever, it's about this company. Maybe there's an incident in the field that made the news, or maybe it's one of their drilling platforms had an issue, whatever. And then maybe on the other end, right, you're reading a book about not a book, but you're reading another piece. I've given you something to look at that deals with General Electric, or Tesla. Um, and you can look at those two pieces, and right away on the surface, right, you're like, well, both of these deal with oil in some way, but both deal with energy. You see, that's pretty easy to see. I mean, Tesla's trying to figure out how to provide stored, electric energy. BP's all about trying to figure out how to keep on mining the earth for fossil fuel energy. But they're both about energy. And maybe they both kind of meet in the middle, because BP is trying to develop some solar energy platforms and some electric energy, and maybe Tesla has to eventually to just maybe fund its bigger vision, maybe has to have a division of hybrid where they use, I don't actually know about that, but what I'm saying is, it's obvious that both of these things are related to each other, or because of a surface level connection, it's oil. But while that is legitimate, that cannot form the basis of an essay. By the way, the whole BP thing and the Tesla thing is just, I just literally came up with that illustration out of the blue, 30 seconds ago. So you probably are dealing with short pieces that are different, that are on different issues. But whatever I pick for you to use to practice this, I know that they'll have a surface level connection that's kind of easy to see if you just step back. And So I definitely want you to, to make use of that as you're developing a text, and that's one, that's one crucial job of a writer is, you are creating a text, and it's got to have a certain length, it's got to have legitimate substance, it's got to be readable, it's got to have a certain composition to it. In other words, a certain structure, a certain makeup. You can't just throw random sentences and random paragraphs together. That's literally the etymological root of composition is placing things together in a way that makes sense and forms universal, or a completed whole. That someone can see. Yes, it has parts, but it forms a whole that I recognize as a whole. It makes sense as a whole. So, but as far as how you arrange those pieces, it's kind of up to you. As you mature as a writer, you realize there are a lot of nifty and fun things you can do with composition. But it always comes back. If you're writing nonfiction, right, it's always going to come back to an observation, or uh, a proposition that you really is the heartbeat of your piece, or facts that you are providing, new facts that you are providing. So anyway, I'm kind of digressing a little bit. Let's go back to this essay at hand. Here's how I'm going to give you a basic template, all right, to use, and then I want you to definitely, consider working in that template, because there are other ways to write a connections essay. But it's good to have a basic strategy that you really know how to do, and then once you get that mastered, you can complicate it, you can rearrange it, you can have variations on it, you can be more creative with your composition. But I'm just going to give you a basic formula here, to use, just to give you a base. I don't want to ever suggest that this formula always has to be used. It just depends on a lot of things, right? What your confidence level, your skill level, the material that you're using to connect. So, this is just something to practice with at this point. So the basic formula I want you to do is I want your essay to have 4 sections, right? 4 sections. Now it needs a title. It needs a pretty good title. Excuse me. And the title that I do not want you to use is connections essay. Don't use that as a title, because that is going to reveal to your reader right away that you're writing for an assignment. I want you to remember that you're trying to write out that for an audience out there, that doesn't know you're a student, doesn't know pretend you're writing to a magazine editor, and you're a freelancer, and you got this article, you got this idea, you wrote it out, and you're just sending it in. Don't let that person ever think that you're writing for a school assignment, right? So don't have any language in your essay that reveals to a reader that you're actually in college writing for a teacher. See what I'm saying? So think about your title, come up with one. Now the first thing I want you to do, the first section is just basically summary section. You're bringing your reader up to speed, because we all know that you're writing to me, right? I'm going to grade your essay, and at this point probably no one else is going to read it. But I know the pieces you're working with, right? But I don't want you to think like that. I want you to think that you're writing to that magazine editor, okay? And that person may not have read those pieces that you're working with, or may not know those events or those things that you're working with. So your very first job here is just to bring your readership up to speed with the facts, or the stuff you're working with, right? So I expect a summary of the 2 pieces, and try to figure out how to make it flow. Okay, I'll have more to say about this toward the end of the essay, but first section, make the summaries. Now, you might need to use 1 paragraph. Maybe you can do it in 1 paragraph. Maybe you need 2 or 3 paragraphs up here, 3 smaller paragraphs. I don't know. You figure that out. You figure out how you would want to do that. I want you to work in a 4-section sort of template, but as far as like counting the number of paragraphs, one of you might do that first section of 1 paragraph, someone else might do it very effectively in 2. Now I think doing it in 4 paragraphs is too much. I think 3 might be the max, but I think you could do it in 3 if you needed 3 paragraphs. So when I give you a template, when I give you a formula to work with, it'll always be in terms of sections. And then I'll tell you that, you know, the actual number of paragraphs depends on what you need to do in those sections and what is your particular style and your particular approach as a writer. So I'm not going to be counting paragraphs. I'm just going to be looking at your essay saying, is it organized correctly, and can I see the flow? Can I see when they transition to another section? How do they make this thing readable but yet organized, right? And so summarize it. And then the second section, again, this might be just 1 paragraph, or maybe you might need 2. The second section is, I want you to discuss the easy to see connection. The one that's just sitting there on the surface that obviously connects the two in terms of how they're in the same category, or how they're dealing with the same thing, or how they're revealing maybe the same human habit, or whatever. You know, it's just some easy way they connect. Now your reader, once they get the summary, when they get that second section where you provide that obvious connection, they are going to be able to track with that very easily and very quickly, right? So you're not really educating them right there. You're not giving them anything new to think about. Basically what you're telling them is, hey, I'm writing a connections essay. I'm writing with this technique. This is the technique that structures my paper, you know. But you're not coming out and saying, hey, I've got to have a structure for the paper. I'm using the connections structure. You know, that we rarely run across effective published work that ever speaks that way to the reader, right? So you can't be that, you know, open about what you're doing. But if you provide an example of how you're going to analyze something, and it's obviously a connections thing, then the reader begins to understand this paper is really interested in developing and manifesting connections, right? So that's how you tell your reader, hey, I'm writing a connections paper here. It should just start off with something very, very easy to see. I think that would be fine. I think that would give you legitimate length for your paper. I think, you know, it's something that is not padding or filler. It actually fits in there. It has a purpose. And it's just helping the reader get going, helping you get going as a writer, you know. So your third section is going to be your specific insight. This is where your voice, your contribution, your reward for the reader that is unique to you, because you're the one that saw it, you know. That's what you need to talk about in the third section. Now, the third section is where I want you to give the reader, show the reader how those 2 pieces I gave you actually connect in a deeper way, in a more profound way, in a way that is more complicated than just what's on the surface, right? So this connection is harder to see. It's harder to understand. It's just, you don't get this by just quickly, you know, reading the 2 pieces and it's just boom, there it is. This is something that you build. This is something that you dig out, and it takes time to do this. It takes multiple readings. That's one reason I want you to read these pieces like 5-6 days before you start writing, so that you can read them, and then you can think about them for a couple days, and you're thinking hard about that deeper connection. All right. And I want you to use your third section to reveal that deeper connection to your reader. Now look, by definition, it's not easy to see. So you have to spend time thinking about it. And I don't want you to think that I have like a couple of right answers or wrong answers here. Now you need to be in the ballpark of what the 2 texts you're working with allow you to discuss. You know, if I give you, you know, 2 texts and they're obviously about the energy, you know, field, then, you know, I really don't think that what we're discussing here is the ancient art of the Chinese samurai or something. I mean, that's just too far out. But but there might be something there. What does it really mean to have energy? Isn't that just movement? I mean, isn't that the ability to do work? I don't know. Maybe you can take a metaphorical approach, or I don't know. But there are a lot of things that can actually, if you think about it, maybe you can actually make it work down there in that third section, in that harder to see connection. But there are some things that it's just too much of a stretch, or it's just I'm not saying any answer goes. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's room for a lot of unique answers, but some are going to be better than others, because once the reader reads it, they realize, oh yeah, that's true. That really is about fear, or that really is about you know um, whatever, that deeper connection. So please give yourself time to think about that, so that you're not trying to stretch something. But this is where the challenge of the assignment is going to be, right? Okay, once you finish your third section, move on. Oh, excuse me. The third section, I think, could be 2 paragraphs, 3, whatever you need, right? I think it needs to probably be more than 1, but keep that in mind. Now the fourth section is the closing, and that's tricky too. I'm not going to talk about closing strategies in this particular video, but one one common closing strategy that is often promoted very much, say in high school writing classes. It's been a long time since I've been there, so I don't want to say it's always done this way, but I can imagine somebody saying, look, when you close, just remind your reader what you said, repeat your main points, repeat your thesis. That's it. I really don't want you to do that. If you need to repeat anything, you're assuming your audience has forgotten it. But if they've forgotten it, then you didn't maintain their interest as you wrote the paper, right? Now, I'm not saying your audience is prodigious and is incredible with their memory. Sometimes as the text grows in length, you might need to repeat some things. But, please be a little more creative in your closing. And maybe once you're down there, you realize that depth connection might actually connect to a third thing that you didn't even talk about, but is in the common cultural sphere of your readership. And maybe you can just refer to that and extend out your observation, so your reader feels like they have something that applies to the case at hand. But once they understand how to really think that way, they can see that it applies to other areas. That's called extension, right? And that might work. Maybe you need to qualify things at the bottom, where you want to make sure that you understand that you're not making some sort of absolute statements, and you want to show that there are exceptions to what you said, but in the main, you think you've got a point. So maybe your closing strategy would be one of qualification, where you're just kind of reminding your reader you're not making absolute claims here. So you can qualify something, you can extend it. There are strategies here, but what I really want to throw out at you is this idea. Very, very many texts, all of them, question mark, don't they have beginnings and endings? So you actually have been working with beginnings and endings all your literate life. Every movie you've watched has had a beginning and has an ending. Every song that you've listened to has had a beginning and has an ending. Every newspaper article, every website that you've looked at, every web article, every little documentary, every YouTube video has had a beginning and has an ending, right? So I think now, as you go forward, at least in the couple of months, can you be very intentional about this the next time you embrace or you engage with the text? Let's say the next time you watch a movie, can you actually consciously think, how is this movie opening? What are the decisions that the writer and the producer and the production company and the filming crew, how did they decide to open this movie? Because conscious decisions were made about the best strategy to open the movie for that story. And at the end is, how did they decide to close it? So, and start developing your own categorizations of openings and closings. Not just for college writing and for essays, but for, you know, as you live your life as a human, you are going to be creating texts all the time, whether it's something for work or whether it's an art piece that you're making, whether it's a little screen recording you're doing, whether it's a power, some sort of oral presentation, whether it's an email you're writing, whether it's I don't know. I don't know what you're doing, but you're doing something with words. If you're a human being, I know you're doing something with words. You're either getting them or you're giving them. Okay? And we do not just throw random words out there. We put them together in sentences, and we try to put the sentences together in other clumps of sentences that they belong with. We try to work with connections. We try to tell you when the conversation is opening, when it's done. We all have that sense. Right? Every time you have a conversation, you're working with a text. How did that conversation open? How did it close? So once you begin realizing the sections of every text, right, you can start looking at what the strategies are that people already have in play for how to open and close. You see? Use one of those for this essay. Why don't you experiment a little bit, all right? So I just wanted to give you, an overview of the essential things that I want to see in how you practice this type of writing, this little form. Now, I said I would talk a little bit more about paragraphing and how that works and flow. And all I'm going to say about this is again, I want to remind you of your extensive history with paragraphs. Because I know I said, well, it might take one paragraph here in this section and 3 paragraphs, but you might be saying, I need more instruction, I need more direction. And I'm saying to you, I don't necessarily want to give you more instruction or direction, because I want to start to make you own the thing. I want to make you try to figure this out, because once you get down in the dirt like that, it becomes a little more real to you. You start being passive and you get a little more active. You have more ownership in the strategies that you develop. Okay? But I want to encourage you, and I want to remind you that you know things about paragraphs that you might not know that you know. I know that's very paradoxical, and Plato might be rolling around in his grave right now based on what I just said. But you have a sense of how good paragraphs work, all right, because of the reading that you've already done in your life. And you might be saying right now, Horn, you don't know me. I do not have a clue. And I'm like, yes, you do. You're just in that weird area where you don't realize how much you actually do know. For example, if I were to tell you to write this whole paragraph, this whole essay, in one huge paragraph, I bet as you tried to do that, you would be thinking, this is kind of weird, right? Because you know how paragraphs work. Or what if I told you to write this essay in 50 short paragraphs? I'm going to count them. I want 50 of them. And I want them to be really, really short. 3 sentences each. Right? You would start off and within 10 minutes you'd be like, this is really weird. I don't like doing this. This is not how... And you would struggle with that because you know how paragraphs work, This is not a long essay. And if I'm asking for multiple paragraphs in this essay because I've given you at least 4 sections, how long do you think, what is the maximum length of these paragraphs? If you have a paragraph that goes 1.5 pages long, that's way too long. Okay. Now, sometimes in the teaching of paragraphs, we like to focus more on the supposed logical structure of a paragraph. And we teach things like this paragraph has to have a topic sentence, and then the rest of the paragraph has to support that topic sentence. That is correct for one type of writing. But what if you have 50 other types of approaches, of ways to do composition? Then that one strategy is going to fall apart on the other 49, So in some cases, yeah, the way you approach something, the way you're writing about something, you need a topic sentence, and then you need a couple sentences that support it, and there's your paragraph. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you just need a paragraph break because you realize that the reader's mind or eye is going to appreciate a literal white space break there. When you give them chunks like that, the mind does something to it. The brain automatically adjusts to how it's going to process the information. So that little indention or that little white space you put between your paragraphs, however way you do it, is effective in that way because it's already cluing the mind in as to what it needs to focus on, how much energy it needs to expend on those moments of focusing. And I'm getting into a little bit of the theory of paragraphing here, but I just want to tell you that it's not rocket science, and you've been working with paragraphs all your life, all your literate life, and I want you to kind of run with the notion, whether you believe it or not, that you actually have a sense as to how these things work. And if you feel like making a paragraph break there, then make a paragraph break and let's just see how it goes. All right. So, all right, 4 sections: summary, surface level connection, depth level connection, closing, and don't forget the title. Thanks for watching.